Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 251. Without any delay, start explanation. Tang Wulin could not help drawing in a cold breath upon hearing his words. 14 three-word battle armor masters? Although such combat capabilities were still no match to Shrek Academy in the beginning, they were still exceedingly terrifying men in the continent. There were but 18 war gods from the Federation's War God Hall. Although Tang Wulin had no idea of the war gods' powers, he suspected that the majority of them were also three-word battle armor masters. In other words, the Blood God Army's fighting abilities were not lacking when compared to the War God Halls. No wonder they paid little regard to their identities and the reason the Amorous Dolor sent Tang Wulin over here. There was hope to rebuild the academy in the future if he could gain the support of the Blood God Army. The soldiers in the front parted into two sides to give way to Jiang Wuyue and Tang Wulin, who came over. Jiang Wuyue opened his mouth to let out a roar while his body enlarged rapidly as he dashed forward valiantly. His fighting technique was immensely domineering and ruthless. With his two-word battle armor on his body and his pair of fists which served as his best weapon, he charged forward to push away a BA and by force. Tang Wulin followed closely behind. His height had exceeded 2.5 meters under the magnification of his two-word battle armor. The wings behind his back spread open while the golden dragon spear in his hand lashed out horizontally against a few devour lizards until their bodies were all smashed into pieces. At the same time, he shook his wrist once to release a multitude of the golden dragon spear's radiance at once. An entire colony of four-clawed bats was devoured by the spear's radiance and transformed into a gush of airflow that was absorbed by the golden dragon spear soon after. Tang Wulin felt different this time when he absorbed the abyssal creature's energy. The sensation he felt earlier was obvious, but now, he only felt a few gushes of airflow that flowed into his body. The light bands surrounding the dragon core flickered with radiance for a moment, but there was no reaction from the dragon core itself. Could it be that his demand for energy had increased? Tang Wulin had not figured it out yet, as there was no time for him to ponder on the battlefield. At present, although there was still a large number of abyssal creatures charging their way toward the close combat battalion, with the artillery attack from behind, the majority of these creatures were injured. With a few companions by his side, he would only need to focus on the attack in front. There was no need to consider anything else, so he attacked to his heart's content. His right foot stomped once against the ground. A layer of golden radiance spread out toward the front. It was the golden dragon shakes the earth. Two BAANS which were charging toward Jiang Wuyue paused for a moment. It was apparent that their momentum had slowed down. The surrounding two shields lashed out, colliding into them, and stopped them in their tracks. Jiang Wuyue moved in a flash and conjured a pair of war hammers in his hands. The double war hammers waved about. Boom, a BAN was thrown away while the other was pushed back to the long-range artillery zone by the golden dragon shocks the Earth's 8 golden dragons which bored out of the ground. Tang Wulin immediately felt different when he launched the golden dragon shocks the Earth. The dragon core was shimmering with radiance when he used the golden dragon 9 moves. The blood essence power increased exponentially within a split second such that the power emitted from the golden dragon shocks the Earth was at least doubled. If it had been in the past, it was impossible that a powerful BAN could be pushed out by using only the golden dragon 9 moves. Roar, it was the golden dragon roar. The enormous golden dragon head bored out from Tang Wulin's torso, then completely enshrouded his whole body. The loud and valiant dragon's roar was heard throughout the entire scene such that even the sounds from the exploding artillery were drowned. A dozen of the weaker abyssal creatures nearest to him was immediately crushed by the shock delivered from the golden dragon roar and transformed into nothing but air. On the other hand, the more powerful abyssal creatures slowed down, so the stress at the close combat battalion dropped abruptly, giving them a chance for a breather. The blood gods in the air could not help gazing over the battlefield. There was no lack of battle armor masters from the close combat battalion, but only a few were two-word battle armor masters. Tang Wulin's and Jiang Wuyue's wings looked very appealing when seen from above. The blood god could not believe his eyes as he looked at the giant golden dragon head roaring. Then, a voice was heard in his headpiece as he nodded gently. He was paying more attention to Tang Wulin now. A raging roar was heard from the direction of the abyssal passage. A gush of grey-white airflow surged out abruptly to block the energy emitted by the long-range attacks. Soon after, a stream of grey-white radiance shot out abruptly, aimed precisely at Tang Wulin. What was that? Tang Wulin felt his consciousness instantly freezing in his mind and the blood in his entire body as well. He watched in fear the thing which extended from the abyssal passage. It turned out to be an enormous finger. A giant finger which was over 10 meters in diameter. A white and almost translucent nail covered the tip of the finger. The finger was thick and large, but it appeared long and slender to one's eyes. The finger was before him in a split second. Meanwhile, a stream of silver light descended from the sky. The dazzling radiance was so bright that it was akin to the creation of heaven and earth. The huge sword's radiance, over 10 meters in width, struck the gigantic nail just in time. A loud rumbling noise that deafened the ears was heard. All the soldiers from the close combat battalion retreated simultaneously, while the surrounding abyssal creatures were blown into pieces from the terrifying explosion. Tang Wulin felt his body lighten at the same time the suffocating pressure vanished. He hastily fell back a few steps as his expression changed to one of fear. The person blocking him was the three-word battle armor master with a broadsword as his weapon. Every strike he made with the sword cast a huge sword's radiance. His title Dolul rank cultivation base was enhanced by his three-word battle armor. He proceeded to chop at the gigantic finger at least a dozen times. Slowly, the finger bent, then it snapped abruptly. A gush of terrifying grey-white radiance burst forth onto the three-word battle armor master's body. The three-word battle armor master was thrown away. He slammed violently into the wall, although he tried adjusting his wings by force so as to fly upward diagonally. Nonetheless, his entire body was still pushed deep into the wall. However, the gigantic finger also shuddered for a moment before it recoiled reluctantly. Tang Wulin's face was already ghastly pale at present. He looked toward Jiang Wuyue, whose expression was equally unpleasant, by his side. What was that? I don't know either. Jiang Wuyue had a countenance of fear similarly. He felt the same suffocating sensation that made him lose all hope. His experience was not as severe as Tang Wulin's, but he was sure that he would die if the finger had been pointed at him just now. The corners of Tang Wulin's lips twitched once. The joy from cultivating his dragon core earlier was immediately swept away. He was still too weak when compared to a true powerhouse. Don't be discouraged. That was a direct attack from the Abyss King. You should be proud of yourself for being able to provoke the Abyss King into crossing the boundary and launching a direct attack at you. A deep voice was heard in his ears. Silver light flashed once and the three-word battle armor master appeared above their heads once again. There was no doubt that the deep voice came from him. Tang Wulin nodded at his savior in the air as he launched the golden dragon spear in his hand into fighting with the abyssal creatures once again. The dragon core supplied him with massive energy in an endless stream. Tang Wulin launched the golden dragon rage domain after being provoked by the Abyss King. The domain that was only effective within a 50-meter radius initially could now achieve 120 meters after being elevated by the dragon core. Over 200 of the powerhouses from his side were covered within the domain. For a moment, their powers increased exponentially such that they could force the army of abyssal creatures into retreating. The long-range attack from behind was even more effective since the space between the abyssal creatures was reduced. The abyssal creatures' fatality rate increased tremendously. Jiang Wuyue received the most obvious elevation from the Golden Dragon Rage domain, which had increased its coverage area and its elevating effect had become even more powerful. Jiang Wuyue also felt that his cultivation base received direct elevation within the domain. It was as if something had awakened within his bloodline. His pair of warhammers swung about with great ease as if he had entered a place where no one puts up any resistance, such that even the BAANS could not stop his advancing tracks. Tang Wulin stood side by side with Jiang Wuyue. They acted as the arrowhead of the close combat battalion to hold out against the most powerful abyssal creatures. They attacked and killed 4 BAANS consecutively and forced them back to the passage entrance. Tang Wulin was highly motivated by all the killing. Grey-black airflows were continuously absorbed into the golden dragon spear as there was a great number of dead abyssal creatures in the surroundings. He could feel the most obvious change in his body when he killed a BA and that his dragon core was beginning to glisten after absorbing a massive amount of energy. If the energy that could be absorbed by Tang Wulin's blood essence vortex, after being filtered by the golden dragon spear, was 100% initially, then the energy absorbed by Tang Wulin's dragon core would now be at 1%. The energy would be condensed into its essence for his consumption. Although the proportion was actually much lower, Tang Wulin obviously felt that his dragon core was growing by itself. It might be slow, but the energy essence that was condensed 100-fold would make it enlarge gradually. Tang Wulin enjoyed the battlefield. Despite the fact that he was almost killed by the Abyss King earlier, he was not afraid because the blood gods were guarding them from above. He still had a fighting chance even if the abyssal creatures such as the Momai and the Black Empress were here. The Golden Dragon Rage Domain was also capable of inspiring the soldiers to fight at the same time. The close combat battalion soldiers fought like an ambush of wild tigers and managed to completely suppress the abyssal creatures as a result of their exponential increase in power. "Boy, aren't you tired?" Jiang Wuyue asked Tang Wulin after he blasted away an abyssal creature with his hammer. The Golden Dragon Rage Domain had been active for over 40 minutes, but Tang Wulin's courage mounted as the battle progressed. Jiang Wuyue depended on his pair of hammers to extend his killing range, so he managed to kill far more abyssal creatures than Tang Wulin. However, as Jiang Wuyue's soul power and physical strength reduced, there was a change in his position with respect to Tang Wulin's. Tang Wulin was walking in front while he was behind at present. No enemy could put up a fight wherever Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear was. He was akin to an invincible general. The abyssal creatures fell unceasingly from the shimmer of his golden radiance. Jiang Wuyue was speechless to find that he was feeling a little lethargic after such a long battle despite his impressive fitness. On the other hand, Tang Wulin's aura had not weakened at all. On the contrary, a layer of misty golden gloss was emitted from his body while he grew more courageous as the battle progressed. "I'm still okay and I should be able to sustain the domain for a period of time still. These abyssal creatures appear to be endless. However, it seems like they are not as strong as before," Tang Wulin spoke as he fought on. The Golden Dragon Roar was most effective when used on a battlefield. The shock it delivered controlled the abyssal creatures over a large distance. These abyssal creatures would then be struck by the destructive attacks. Tang Wulin stood at the forefront, so he absorbed the most energy not only from the creatures he killed but also the ones killed by his comrades. A stream of the golden spear's radiance spurted over 30 meters from the tip of his golden dragon spear. He had never condoned any massacre in such an indulgent manner before. There had been no opportunity for him when he was on the continent. However, he could now finally unleash the pain that had been suppressed in his heart when Shrek Academy was previously destroyed in a massacre. Jiang Wuyue followed closely with clenched teeth. They had fought non-stop for almost 20 minutes. An order was dispatched from behind for them to fall back. The 2nd Iron Blood Battalion had already arrived. The soldiers were fatigued, so they would need to be rested and regrouped to prevent unnecessary fatalities. "Sir, I wish to fight for a little while more." Tang Wulin retracted his Golden Dragon Rage Domain. Although the domain consumed a lot of energy from him, he could replenish the energy at an even faster rate. Nevertheless, he would need to rest and regroup after using the domain for a prolonged period since the domain not only consumed his bloodline power but also his spiritual power. It seemed like he could not sustain his spiritual power any longer. "Sure, then you shall fight for a little while more. I'll inform the 2nd Battalion commander." "Boy, you're a monster." Jiang Wuyue brought his battalion of soldiers into retreat, leaving Tang Wulin behind to hold out at the forefront. The golden dragon spear in Tang Wulin's hand projected streams of remnant shadows as it moved swiftly. The 2nd Close Combat Battalion had a smooth takeover from the 1st Close Combat Battalion. Tang Wulin felt the stress of fighting the battle lighten as soon as the new batch of soldiers came in. A golden light flashed once as he unleashed the Golden Dragon Rage Domain once again. His spiritual power was slightly restored after the momentary respite earlier. He relied on his Golden Dragon Spear's assistance, so he did not bother with his soul power and blood essence at all. The domain's effect was crucial in the group battle. The soldiers from the 2nd Battalion immediately felt their strengths defy the heavens as soon as they charged into the domain. The abyssal creatures were suppressed such that there was utterly no way they could get into battle formation. They could not even charge out of the cave due to the intensive long-range attacks. Tang Wulin had been at the forefront with the other close combat soldiers offering him assistance at his flanks. His fighting capacity was the best in the entire scene. He refused to back down and relied on his superb physical endurance as well as his attack and defense abilities. Jiang Wuyue had already retreated to the back at present. He did not leave immediately but rushed excitedly over to the long-range attack side where Long Yushue was. That boy is not human. Isn't he even a little tired? Jiang Wuyue was already fatigued after engaging in a long, fierce battle despite being an Overlord Dragon Soul Master. Yet, it seemed like Tang Wulin was still lively and in high spirits. Furthermore, he had just launched another domain. The Golden Dragon Rage domain had a critical impact on the battlefield. Close combat could be carried out with such precision due to its presence. Otherwise, the Black Empress's assault earlier would have delivered a destructive blow to them. Long Yushue also felt speechless. She was well aware that Tang Wulin was very powerful, but she had not expected him to be that powerful. The two-word battle armor on his body had an overall amplification effect on his performance at the battlefield such that he could even be on par with a blood god. His individual fighting capacity was certainly far below a blood god's, yet his ability to assist in the battle could not be matched even by a blood god. His domain, capable of supporting the entire battalion, was not something the blood gods were bestowed with. The battle continued as every abyssal tide was a prolonged fight, especially the Grade 3 abyssal tide which would go on for at least 2 to 4 weeks. However, they had a good start. The stress they faced in the beginning was not too much, making it easy for their headquarters to allocate adequate resources and make suitable arrangements. There were some rough spots which were difficult to block, but the smooth operation of the defense allowed them to allocate more staff for preparatory work. There were a few large-scale soul devices being transported continually for installation. The entire Blood God army was running smoothly. Yushue, do you realize that there's something peculiar about his golden spear? Usually, after an abyssal creature died, its abyssal energy will return to its abyssal plane to nourish a brand new abyssal creature. Yet, Tang Wulin's spear seems to be able to devour the abyssal energy, so it has no way of returning anymore. I've no idea what's going on with him. I've heard from the regimental commander that the abyssal plane is capable of sustaining the effort to launch the abyssal tide continuously because their original source has never been harmed before. As a result, their origin energy can always be restored after the battle. If the effect of Tang Wulin's golden spear can be developed, then we'll be able to weaken the abyssal plane's strength a little during each battle. They'll need to consider that the next time they wish to launch another abyssal tide. Long Yushue squinted as she had also realized the same thing. Those grey-black airflows were sucked away by the golden spear while Tang Wulin's aura seemed to grow stronger after absorbing those airflows. That ought to be the long spear's effect. Every soul master had his or her own secret. As such, it would not be polite to ask him about it. The situation was especially evident in today's battle. Tang Wulin was the person charging in front, so the surrounding airflows transformed from the dead and injured abyssal creatures were surging into his golden spear akin to the rivers that flowed into the sea. The golden spear's radiance extended almost 30 meters and was simply all-conquering, such that even a BA found it difficult to resist. It seemed like his power had improved. Had he always been rejuvenating himself in the past? Of course, they were unaware of the birth of Tang Wulin's Dragon Core after he absorbed a portion of the Black Empress abyssal energy to elevate his blood essence power to another level. His blood essence's strength was enough for him to rival a 7-ring soul sage. Moreover, he had the amplification of his two-word battle armor. Naturally, his fighting capacity was elevated on a large scale. The Golden Dragon Spear was closely related to Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon King bloodline. His bloodline power was elevated with the assistance of the Dragon Core, so his Golden Dragon Spear's power had also been enhanced to absorb energy from a longer distance. Tang Wulin's cultivation base was elevated by a large chunk. He would be able to maintain his extreme fighting capability as long as he continued to absorb abyssal energy. Moreover, his dragon core had already fully stabilized after it was infused with such energy and turned into the core of all his blood essence power. The core was still slowly expanding. Tang Wulin had been at the front line during the battle not only to assist the army but also for his own benefit. Even though no Black Empress pure energy was available, he could not keep himself from absorbing the enormous amount of energy in any case. A massive amount of energy burst out from the abyssal creatures that died from the long-range attack explosions. A major portion of this energy was immediately absorbed by Tang Wulin, and only those further away from him managed to flee. It was as though 2 battalions of soldiers were helping him to kill the abyssal creatures while he was converting these abyssal creatures' energy for his own use. Meanwhile, his dragon core immediately received a major boost as a result of this process. Tang Wulin felt as the golden glow inside his body grew brighter and brighter, though he gradually felt bloated all over. It was apparent that this feeling was due to his overabsorption of energy, but the dragon core was like a bottomless pit that continuously consumed this energy to strengthen itself. Such a golden opportunity was hard to come by so naturally. Tang Wulin was reluctant to fall back. The dragon core could grow stronger if this continued. Tang Wulin believed that the agony he suffered when he was breaking through the latter golden dragon seals in the future would be relatively lesser because of this. All of a sudden, just as Tang Wulin's spear pierced through a large abyssal creature, an icy cold aura burst forth soundlessly. His spirit abyss rank spiritual power made him shudder loudly. He flapped his wings without the slightest hesitation as he fell back instantly while conjuring the golden dragon source to the heaven through the tip of the golden dragon spear in his hand. His domineering golden dragon body was launched in the same instant. The frosty aura came right up to him in the next moment. The golden dragon source to the heaven was stripped away by the gush of frigidity. Not only that, the aura even managed to stab right onto golden dragon spear. The irresistible and terrifying energy compelled the golden dragon spear to smash against Tang Wulin, and then the iciness cut onto his chest. The dragon moon battle armor shimmered rapidly as the effect of the domineering golden dragon body burst out, but Tang Wulin could still sense that his domineering golden dragon body was about to collapse. Since he was bestowed with this ability, this was his first time feeling so weak. Fortunately, the domineering golden dragon body's effect was increased by much more than before under the assistance of the dragon core. Tang Wulin managed to block the attack in the end, but he was still blasted away by the blow and crashed ferociously in the distance. He could only stabilize his body with great effort after he collided with 2 mechas, sending them flying. The golden dragon spear in his hand jutted forward abruptly as the strength extracted from the domineering golden dragon body once again conjured the golden dragon source to the heaven. Not only that, Tang Wulin finally unleashed his martial soul as countless blue-silver emperor vines surged out like a swarm of bees. His 4th soul ring glowed brightly as he began the blue-silver overlord transformation. The blue-silver emperor vines transformed into a large net, shielding his body as he rapidly fell back. Blood essence flowed wildly in his chest. The terrifying chill was still surging into his body. He felt like his 2-word battle armor was no longer capable of resisting the tide. The frostiness had only paused for a moment when the blue-silver emperor vines created by the blue-silver overlord transformation were reduced to fragments. The icy coldness pursued Tang Wulin with grey-white radiance. As swift as Tang Wulin was, the grey-white light was even faster. Fear soon emerged in Tang Wulin's mind. A figure descended from the sky at this exact moment. A silver-white energy blade firmly swayed before Tang Wulin's face. Boom! Tang Wulin saw the silver-white silhouette expand within his field of vision, and in the next moment, the figure slammed against him. Both of them were blasted to the back together. Tang Wulin had only managed to store his golden dragon spear and wrap his hands around the silver-white figure's waist when both of them tumbled to the outside. However, the grey-white figure finally stopped moving and revealed its image. Surprisingly, it was a woman. A woman dressed in a grey-white dress. Her eyes were also grey-white in color while her long grey hair hung down loosely all the way from her shoulders to her feet. There were so many Blood God Army soldiers in the surroundings, But at that exact moment, any attack that entered the area 30 meters around her body would be annihilated instantly. It was even more peculiar that there were countless grey-white wisps of air slipping out from her body and surging toward the abyssal passage behind her. It made her body gradually turn translucent. Her grey-white eyes were immediately locked onto Tang Wulin's body. Her gaze was filled with icy coldness and desolation. Her intense designs to murder made Tang Wulin feel like his spirit abyss rank spiritual power was about to freeze. What's going on here? How could she be so powerful? The blood god somersaulted while slapping a palm onto Tang Wulin's body. Tang Wulin felt a gush of tremendous force radiating through him, and he was slapped out of the cave at once. He was thrown all the way back to the long-range attack team. Meanwhile, there was a sudden burst of intense silver light erupting from the blood god's body. The saber in her hand was raised high into the air while the domain radiance underneath her feet spread out. The surrounding air immediately became thick and sticky. Both the enemy and the army began to slow down. On the other hand, the saber in her hand seemed like it was frozen and unfathomably heavy as she slowly pushed it into the void. The grey-haired woman's gaze finally fell upon the blood god. Her eyes appeared even colder, but with a single sway of her body, she vanished without a trace into the abyssal passage. Silver shadows flashed past, and a large stretch of abyssal creatures immediately turned into smog, disintegrating in succession as they sank into the cave after the grey-haired woman. To everyone's surprise, the abyssal tide actually paused momentarily. Tang Wulin spread out his wings and struggled to stabilize his body. However, he still stumbled upon landing. He supported himself with a hand against the ground, and only then did he manage to steady himself. He lowered his head and immediately discovered that there was a grey-white streak on his Dragon Moon battle armor. It extended all the way from his right shoulder to the left side of his abdomen. The protective shield of his battle armor, along with almost one-third of the suit, was broken. His two-word battle armor was spirit-forged in addition to the 3 types of spirit alloys used, so it had already begun its self-repairing process. However, the grey-white scar seemed to possess a special form of potency that affected Dragon Moon battle armor's ability to mend itself. It seemed like it would take a longer period of time before it could be completely restored. So terrifying! Tang Wulin could confirm without a doubt that his body would have been cut open by the grey-haired woman with one strike if not for his domineering golden dragon body. This was simply unbelievable. How powerful the opponent must have been in order to do this. Just judging by the frontal collision which took place earlier, even the title Duluos which Tang Wulin encountered in the past might not have been able to launch such a powerful attack. Not to forget the fact that his dragon core had already elevated his blood essence almost to the rank of Soul Sage. With the addition of his spirit alloy two-word battle armor, Tang Wulin could at least rely on the domineering golden dragon body when he was engaged in a full-blown confrontation. Judging purely on defense alone, Tang Wulin was not inferior to a title Dolor. He was genuinely exerting a title Dolor rank defense even if it had just lasted momentarily. Even so, he was still almost killed. Though the golden dragon source to the heaven was fully unleashed twice, one after another, it had been completely annihilated by the grey-white airflow. How high did the opponent's attacking ability have to be in order to do that? The blood god had also suffered losses from the collision with the enemy. A full-force attack from three-word battle armor had struck home, but the blood god had ended up rolling on the ground just like Tang Wulin. The enemy's power was so terrifying that she could even measure up to a human hyperdolor, right? Could a powerhouse of this rank emerge from the abyssal creatures? Everyone sighed in relief when the attacks from the abyssal creatures suddenly subsided. However, the combat strength displayed by the grey-haired girl still struck fear in some of their hearts. With a flash of silver light, the blood god was already in front of Tang Wulin. Contrary to Tang Wulin's expectations, the voice that came from under the mask was that of a woman. Cold and crisp, her voice made the listener feel as if they were eating iced watermelon in winter. "Come with me," she ordered, roughly grabbing Tang Wulin's pauldron. She moved swiftly, taking them out of the cave. Long Yuxue and Jiang Wuyue looked on as the duo left. They could not help but exchange looks. They did not know what they were supposed to say. The scene just now had surpassed their knowledge of abyssal creatures. The close-range and long-range attackers went back to their formations to prepare for the coming of another abyssal tide at any time. Tang Wulin, on the other hand, was being led by the Blood God. They walked out of the abyssal cavern and flew straight for the army's headquarters. After they exited the cavern, the Blood God spoke, "Follow me on your own." She let go of Tang Wulin and flew in front of him. Tang Wulin hastily stabilized his body and steadied his breathing. He flapped his pair of dragon wings and followed her. The Blood God seemed to have arrived behind the command post in a flash. She dropped toward an inconspicuous yard. The yard did not look too different from the camp. As their feet touched the ground, she started retracting her battle armor, which turned into beams of silver light and melted into her body. Tang Wulin landed behind her and drew his Dragon Moon battle armor back as well. Because he was behind her, Tang Wulin could only see the Blood God's back. She wore a clean, white military uniform and a star hung upon her shoulders. To Tang Wulin's surprise, she was a major general. Her silvery white hair was short, which added to her valiant and heroic bearing. She stood with her back straight, supported by her slender waistline. The feeling of rolling around with her before this resurfaced in his mind. That was right. He felt that her waist was very slim. He did not expect that the Blood God was truly a female. She was a blood goddess. This blood goddess's figure was truly astonishing. Her waistline was especially slim, but her buttocks were the most thick-fleshed among all the beautiful ladies whom he had seen before. Her extremely rounded bubble butt and her waistline formed a wondrous arc. Her hips were slightly thick, but her legs were long. All these were wrapped within the military uniform, which appealed greatly to male hormones. "Follow me." The Blood Goddess turned to glance at Tang Wulin, which gave him a glimpse of her face. Her icy blue eyes and silver hair truly formed a peculiar combination. Her hair was not like Gu Yuana's. Gu Yuana's hair had a crystalline quality to it, while hers was whiter, though it still appeared silky and smooth. She was not exceptionally beautiful. At least, she was lacking in this respect compared to Gu Yuana, but she was filled with heroic spirit. Maybe this was a unique trait of a soldier. Tang Wulin had seen this in Long Yuxue, and now he saw it again in her. Tang Wulin followed the Blood Goddess into the building. The temperature of their surroundings rose and immediately made him feel relaxed. He entered the narrow and cramped barracks. There was an elevator straight ahead. A beam of light scanned them, and the Blood God bracelet on the Blood Goddess's arm shone as their lights met. With a wave of her arm, a halo was unleashed from her bracelet, which clearly had a different rank from Tang Wulin's, and the light enveloped his body. She then walked toward the elevator. The elevator doors slid open and Tang Wulin hastily followed her into it. There were no buttons inside the elevator, but after the doors slid shut, it immediately moved. It felt as if it was going down. After dozens of seconds, the elevator doors reopened. The Blood Goddess, who looked to be in her 30s, walked out of the car and brought him into a round lobby. The lobby was surrounded by 3 rows of screens showing the situation of every cavern. They must have been surveillance footage of the general conditions of the caverns. "Welcome to the Blood God Battalion. You may call me Blood 8, because I'm ranked 8th among the 9 Blood Gods. The ranking is only based on strength and not age," the Blood Goddess said with her ice-cold voice. "Good day, Senior Officer." It was only now that Tang Wulin had the opportunity to salute her. With great respect, he continued, "Thank you for saving my life." Blood 8 waved her hand in dismissal and pressed the Blood God bracelet on her wrist. The screens around them parted and revealed hidden doors. 4 of the doors opened and a person walked out from each one. "What's the matter, little 8?" came a sluggish voice. It was a man who looked to be about 26 or 27 years old. His hands were crossed behind his head, and he had a lazy expression on his face. However, a golden Major General star glittered on his shoulder. Blood 8's face darkened. "Blood 7, don't make me repeat myself. Call me Blood 8, not Little 8. Blood 7 chuckled. All right. We're all on the same team. Don't be too sensitive about such things." "Humph." Blood 8 snorted. The other 3 walked toward them as well. Among them, there was a woman who looked to be in her 50s. She said wearily, "Blood 7, you and that mouth of yours. One day, if Blood 8 surpasses you, we'll see if you can still act like this." Blood 7 laughed. "Can't you see that that's precisely my motivation for cultivating harder? Sister 3, if such a day truly comes, you must protect me." Blood 3 shook her head helplessly, but her gaze fell on Tang Wulin. "Blood 8, you've brought someone new here. Does he have enough potential?" Blood 8 nodded. "He's somewhat interesting. Let's take a look at the recording first. It happened in cave number 6. As she spoke, she walked to a screen and started pushing some buttons. Tang Wulin saluted the newcomers, "Good day, senior officers." Blood 3 smiled. "Relax. The Blood God Battalion is different from the others. We don't have that many rules here. I'll introduce us. I'm Blood 3. This is Blood 5, Blood 6, and Blood 7. You've met Blood 8. Usually, there's only 9 of us in Blood God Battalion. Welcome." Blood 5 and Blood 6 were males. Blood 5 was big and tall with tanned skin. He looked like a black iron tower as he stood there, lofty as a mountain. Blood 6 was thin and small. He was also the most average-looking among all of them. He looked like he would not even hurt a fly. His presence could barely be felt. It was as if he did not exist. He also wore a genial smile on his face. However, Tang Wulin noticed that his arms were exceptionally slender. Although he was thin and small, there was a certain edge to him. He must have been terrifyingly fast and an agility system battle soul master. Blood God Battalion? Tang Wulin had not heard much about the Blood God Battalion. Long Yushue, too, had not spoken much about it. Clearly, this place was a well-kept secret in the Blood God Army. However, there was no doubt that they were the true core of the Blood God Army's combat strength. Blood 7 came to Tang Wulin's side and smiled. "Little brother, where are you from? I see you're a second lieutenant. You've been here long?" Tang Wulin replied, "Senior officer, I joined not long ago. I came with Tang sect's recommendations." "A recruit from the Tang sect?" Blood 7's gaze flickered, but his gaze was directed at Blood 6. "It's someone from your Tang sect." Blood 6 immediately displayed a faint smile on his face. "Welcome, little brother. Tang sect, eh? Who recommended you?" Tang Wulin replied, "His Eminence the Amorous de Law." When he heard the words Amorous de Law, Blood 6's expression changed slightly. He seemed perturbed. "Everyone, come and see this." At that moment, Blood 8's voice attracted everyone's attention. They all walked up to the screen. On the screen, a replay of the battle which Tang Wulin and the others had fought in was displayed. The replay started from when Tang Wulin had not joined the fray in the cavern. He was standing beside Jiang Wuyue at the rear. Blood 8 tapped on the screen on a figure who was wearing battle armor. Everyone understood that that was Tang Wulin. Naturally, the scenes of the resulting fight played on the screen. When the replay had just begun, everyone still acted naturally. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.